On my birthday, my husband walked into our home with a family I had never seen before, and in that single moment, my whole world tilted like a chair with one leg too short. I stood there, holding a plate of lemon cake, and trying to understand why 3 strangers were standing behind the man I had loved for more than 3 decades. The air felt thick like summer heat in a small room, yet I kept breathing, because I had learned long ago that when life tries to steal your breath, you breathe anyway. My husband looked older than he had that morning, though the sun had barely reached the afternoon. His shoulders sagged like he had been carrying a secret for too long, and the truth was he had been. For 30 years he had carried it, and now it stood in front of me in the form of a woman who looked nervous and 2 grown children who looked confused. They did not smile, they did not step forward, they simply waited for him to speak, and when he did his voice was thin and unsteady. He said that this was the family he had been hiding for 3 decades. He said that he had made mistakes when he was young and foolish and scared. He said he had never known how to tell me, and that today my birthday felt like the day everything had to come out, because he could not live another year with all the weight he had carried in silence. He said all of this with tears in his eyes, and I watched those tears fall like tiny confessions hitting the floor. For a long moment no one moved, the air hung heavy and slow like syrup. My husband waited for my anger, but got something else instead. I set the plate of cake down on the table very gently. I walked toward him with a calm that did not belong to me. It was like the universe lent me strength, because I surely did not have it on my own. I looked at the woman first. She looked tired, like life had kept her awake for many nights. Then I looked at the 2 children, who were not children at all, but grown adults with shadows of fear behind their eyes. I wondered how long they had known about me. I wondered if they had hated me. I wondered what stories they had been told, but instead of asking questions, I simply smiled, not because I was okay, not because I understood anything. I smiled because sometimes the soul chooses grace even when the heart is breaking. I told my husband to sit. I told the strangers to sit too. I told them that no one was leaving until we had spoken with honesty, because the time for secrets had ended the moment they walked through my door. They sat quietly like students waiting for their names to be called. My husband kept his eyes down. I kept mine steady, and then I reached under the dining table and pulled out a small white box tied with a ribbon. This was the gift I had planned to give my husband after dinner. It was supposed to be a sweet moment, but now it felt like a test of something much deeper. I placed the box in front of him. He stared at it like it might burn his fingers. I told him to open it. His hands shook as he untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside the box was a letter, just one letter written in my own careful handwriting. He unfolded it slowly. His eyes scanned the first lines, and I saw his breath catch. The letter was something I had written the week before after feeling uneasy for reasons I could not explain. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind can grasp anything. In the letter I had written about forgiveness. Not forgiveness for him specifically, but forgiveness as a choice that shapes the soul. I had written that after 30 years with him, I had learned that love is not a perfect picture. It is a cracked vase still holding flowers. It is a table with scratches from all the meals shared. It is 2 people trying and failing and trying again. I had written that my gift to him this year was the promise that I would continue to face every storm beside him as long as he brought the truth to me and not hide it. When he reached the end of the letter, he began to cry, not soft tears, but deep tears that come from the center of regret. His shoulders shook, the room grew quiet. Even the strangers sat still as if they had stepped into the heart of something sacred and painful. The woman who had come with him finally spoke. Her voice was thin and tired. She said she had never meant to hurt me. She said she had lived in fear for 30 years too. She said she had not wanted any of this to fall on my birthday, but my husband had insisted on telling the truth today, because he said birthdays are reminders that life is short. I listened to her. My pulse thudded in my ears, but I listened anyway. And when she finished, I took a long, slow breath and told her something she did not expect. I told her that I did not hate her. I told her that life can twist people into strange shapes, and sometimes the only way they can survive is by hiding. I told her that what had been done could not be undone, but what mattered now was what happened next. The two grown children looked at me with wide eyes. One of them asked if I was angry. It was such a pure question that it softened me even more. I told them that anger was too small a word for what I felt. I told them that my heart felt like an ocean with storms and calm waters all at the same time. I told them that anger would burn me from the inside out, and I refused to let it. My husband finally raised his head. His face was red and wet. He asked if I was leaving him. He asked it like a child asking if the sun would rise tomorrow. I could see that he expected me to pack a suitcase and never look back. But I did not leave. Instead, I told him something that surprised even me. I told him that leaving was easy. Anyone can run. What is hard is staying and choosing to rebuild something that has cracked. What is hard is understanding that a human being is flawed long before they grow old. What is hard is choosing compassion when betrayal stands in front of you like a shadow. He grabbed my hand with trembling fingers. His grip was desperate yet gentle. He whispered that he was sorry. He whispered it like a prayer. I let him hold my hand. I let him speak. I let him crumble because sometimes you need to let someone fall apart before you can help them stand again. We spent hours talking. The air shifted slowly from heavy to bearable. The strangers became less like strangers and more like human beings with their own wounds and histories. The woman explained how their past had been tangled and complicated. The children told me what they had heard about me. Some stories were wrong, some were incomplete, but we talked about it all. By the time the sun began to set, the house felt different. My birthday cake sat untouched on the table. The ribbon from the box lay on the floor like a fallen feather. My husband sat beside me with his hand wrapped around mine, and I held it not because everything was fixed, but because I could still feel love under the cracks. Before they left, I stood at the doorway and looked at them. The woman thanked me for not shouting. The children thanked me for listening. I nodded. I did not promise anything. I did not pretend things would be simple. I simply told them that healing takes time and that we would all have to move carefully. When the door closed, the silence inside the house felt soft instead of sharp. My husband turned to me with eyes full of fear and hope tangled together. He asked me what I wanted to do next. I told him the truth. I said I wanted to breathe. I said I wanted to think. I said I wanted to walk through this with strength, even though my heart was trembling. And then I said something that felt like the most honest thing I had spoken all day. I said that I wanted to grow instead of break. He nodded slowly as if those words were the first gift he had ever truly understood. Then he pulled me into his arms and I allowed myself to cry into his shoulder. The tears were not only for pain, they were for release, for acceptance, for the strange kind of courage that life sometimes forces into your hands. That night when I finally blew out the lonely candle on my birthday cake, I made a silent wish, not for an easier life, not for a perfect love. I wished for the strength to keep my heart open even when it would be easier to shut it forever. And somehow I knew that this was the beginning of a different chapter, not a perfect one, not a simple one, but a true one. And sometimes the truest stories are the ones that rise from the rubble and keep walking anyway.